Have you been trolling your teammates by picking Omen on Icebox? Are you tired of idiots in your rank games not knowing how to place a basic Viper wall? Well, today you're in luck because I'll be giving you guys the ultimate Viper guide. You guys already know, I'm gonna give you the rundown on all her abilities, best ways to use them, and tips and tricks to give you the advantage when playing Viper in ranked. Alright, let's jump right into it.
It out! 3 kills!
To start this guide off, I actually think it's important we first go over what maps you should be playing Viper on. She's not as flexible, I would say, as the other controller agents, and there are some maps that you really want to be picking her where she's a must pick, and other maps that you definitely don't want to be picking her because you're basically throwing the game. Now, what maps are good for her? Well, of course, on Icebox, she's an absolute must pick. This is her current strongest map in the map pool, with Breeze being removed earlier this year. Pearl and Fracture are also some of her stronger maps right now that you can run her as a solo controller or in a double controller composition. She works perfectly fine. On maps like Split and Lotus, she is viable and can work, but is best in a double controller composition. Running her solo on these maps will be pretty difficult, and you might just be best picking another controller if you're going to be the only smokes player on your team, which is usually the case in ranked. And as for Haven and Ascent, I really wouldn't recommend you pick her on these maps. These are by far her worst maps, and any other dome controller will be much more helpful for your team in taking space and playing defense on larger maps. When it comes to your role on a team, you are of course the controller / smokes player. That means a couple of things. Your primary job will be to use your wall and orb to cut off sightlines for your team to take space on attack and slow down the enemy team when they're pushing you on defense. What's unique about Viper's wall and smoke orb though is that they actually inflict decay on any enemies that pass through them. Decay instantly takes away 30 of your health points and another 10 for every other second you remain affected by it. This makes Viper's smokes the most dangerous for enemies to push and can stall for quite a long time. This, in combination with your snake bites, allow you to stop pushes in their tracks and makes Viper one of the best sight anchors on defense in the game. What's also unique about Viper 2 is that her abilities are actually fuel based and can only be used when she has a certain amount of it in her fuel bar. It's pretty similar to what you'd see in other games like League of Legends with a mana bar, for example. Using one of your abilities will deplete your fuel bar in 15 seconds, while using Bolt will deplete it in 10 seconds, and the fuel bar takes 20 seconds to fully replenish from 0 to 100. But you don't have to wait until 0 for it to start replenishing. If you don't need your smokes up, you can manually turn them off to start replenishing your fuel. Because of the way her fuel and smokes work, the best Viper players in the world will learn to min-max their abilities to maximize uptime for when it's really necessary to have your abilities up. As you learn and play Viper, over time you will also develop the skill of knowing when to put down your abilities to save fuel for crucial situations where it will be needed later. Now let's go deeper into her abilities, starting with her wall, aka Toxic Screen. This is your E ability by default that you get for free every round. It's a long line of green gas that cuts sightlines and goes through walls. Your wall can only be placed once in a round and cannot be repositioned. This is why it's crucial to learn to place your wall properly as a Viper player. If you mess it up, you're gonna screw over your team really badly in a lot of rounds. Now, proper wall placement is map and site dependent, of course, and I can't go over every single bomb site and every wall to place in this single video. But in general, on attack, you want to cover as many spots where the enemies can peek you while you're pushing up into a bomb site, while giving your team enough room to take space. On defense, you want to cover as many places where the enemies can push through so that they're always decayed before they enter the bomb site, giving you the edge in a gunfight. Now, to demonstrate this a little bit more in depth, let's hop in game real quick so I can show you guys. Alright guys, so we're here on Icebox. So let's pretend you're hitting the A site on Icebox and you want to set up with your team a wall that will help them take site. What you'll often see a lot of, I guess you could say, inexperienced Viper players will do is a pretty basic wall like this. And what this wall will do is essentially just cut off screens, which is fine because of course the defenders will have to push through screens when they want to retake the A site. But I actually don't really like using this wall. I think you can get more value through other walls.
Toxin screen down.
So if I just take that back, when attacking the A site, I actually rather jump up into this corner and line up my wall with essentially the door from heaven. And what this wall does is it still cuts off screens that they have to push through. There's no way around that. And anyone who comes through heaven will also need to push through your wall. It cuts off the line, and if they want to peek into it, you'll definitely see their gun barrel coming out, and they'll still get vulnerable. So I like this wall a lot more because it covers more areas. It covers the screen area that they have to push, and it covers up the heaven area that they have to push. Yes, the wall is a little bit more on the right hand side, meaning you technically have less map control if you want to look at it that way, but at the end of the day, you're not really seizing much of this backside area. You don't really need it. All you need is a safe wall to get bombed down and play a proper post plan, and that's why I prefer this type of wall a lot more, because it covers more areas and pretty simple. Okay, now let's move on to Viper's next ability, which is her Poison Cloud or Smoke Orb. This is your Q ability, which costs 200 credits that you can buy once per round. This is essentially Viper's version of a Dome Smoke, but unlike other Dome Smokes like from Brim or Omen, to place this you need to actually physically throw it or place it. You don't pull up an iPad like Brim or enter some sort of shadow form, so learning a couple lineups for your Poison Cloud can really go a long way. You can use it to cover a different part of the map that your wall doesn't. For example, on Icebox, many players will use it mid on attack to deny the enemy team info if your team is taking mid control, or just to cut sightlines when your team is crossing from A to B site so that the enemy team can't see you crossing or kill you while you're doing it. You wouldn't ever use your wall to do this, it gets much more value elsewhere, but having your smoke there can put a lot of pressure on your attack sides and can also open the possibility of mid lurks. Otherwise, another common tactic is to place your Poison Cloud on the bomb once your team has already planted it. If the enemy team goes to defuse, they will be decayed and will be very easy to spray down with a couple bullets. Just be careful they aren't in some sort of weird position and are just sticking to defuse. If you haven't killed them in a couple seconds, just take down your smoke to see if they're still on the bomb. Last thing you want is for them to stick the bomb in your own smoke. If you do some homework, you can actually combine your orb with snakebite lineups to stall them for a ridiculously long time. This combo will force them off the bomb or just straight up kill them if they sit in it for more than a second or two. So it's a pretty powerful tool to have in your back pocket on attack sides as a Viper player. On defense, you can do the same thing but in reverse. Before attempting a defuse, place your orb on top of the bomb and try sticking the bomb to half or tapping the bomb to force out enemies and capitalize. Otherwise, you can use your orb to cover the opposite bomb site than your wall to have full map presence on defense. This lineup I learned on Pearl allows me to help my A site players while being able to hold down B at the same time with my Viper wall. This way, no matter where the enemy team ends up pushing, they will be forced to walk through my smokes, giving my team the advantage in gunfights. Your Poison Cloud is the most versatile tool in your kit, and like I said, learning a few lineups on her best map can go a long way. Alright, now onto your mollies, aka snake bites. These cost 200 credits each and you're able to buy 2 of them per round. They last 5.5 seconds and do 12.5 damage per second to enemies who pass through them, while also applying a vulnerable debuff. When an enemy is vulnerable, they take double damage from all sources. This makes them, in combination with your wall or smoke orb, very strong at stalling pushes, as the combination of the vulnerability from the snake bites and the decay from the wall or orb make it very easy for you to pick up kills on enemies and they won't want to push it. Use them as you would any other molly in the game. Stall pushes, force enemies out of corners that you know they're in, and of course stall defuse in post plant if you know lineups or can get one off. Using snake bites with your orb to stall defenders in post plant has got to be one of the most oppressive things you can do in all of Valorant, but it will require you learning some lineups, of course, to do it from a safe place and not just standing out in the open. Now, while this can be very powerful, you really need to remember that lineups are situational and should not be used every round. Many times, it would be way better for you to play up with your team for trades rather than sitting back and playing for lineups. Defenders will start to retake faster or send a flank to kill you while you're looking up at the sky doing your lineups once they figure out that's how you play. If you're always on lineup duty, that makes it a 5v4 retake on site in the defender's favor, assuming no one died when you planted the bomb. As you gain experience, you'll learn the situations in which it's best to play with the team or play for lineups. But more often than not, it's just best to play up with your team, so be sure to adjust to what the enemy team is doing if they are starting to counter you, and always be mixing things up to throw them off. And lastly, we have Viper's ultimate, which is Viper's Pit. This ultimate allows you to create a giant smoke cloud that your team can play around or inside. This applies decay to enemies and stays up as long as you are alive inside of it. Die and it will fall, stay outside for too long and it will also fall. On attack, you can use it when close to the bomb site to force off defenders or force them to take unfavorable gunfights while their health keeps getting lower and lower from the decay. Enemies are highlighted for you, making it easier to see them once they enter and easier for you to pick up kills, of course. Just be careful of flashes, stuns, or recon abilities when the enemy team is retaking. These can screw you over really hard, and if you die, that's the worst possible thing. You need to stay alive to keep the pit up, and dying often means an easy retake for the enemy team. On defense, you can use it similarly to cut off a large area of space the attackers like to push. This one on Icebox, for example, is really strong as it cuts off anyone trying to enter the A site, and because it's elevated, they can't go over the top with the zip lines, and you can also play in an elevated position on top of pipes, which is really strong and throws them off all the time. This is pretty much as perfect a Viper ult as you can get on the defense. But also, I want to show off a bad ultimate so you know what to avoid, because I've seen one too many Viper ults that go wrong in my ranked games, and I don't want you to be that guy. So let's quickly hop back in game. Now on B, you'll basically see the same thing from a lot of Viper players. If they're playing defense and they hear people rushing B main, they'll try to pop their Viper ult on top of the bomb site just like this. Don't get in my way. Enemies can scale up behind yellow, and then they can use a recon ability or flashes, and they can pinch you from multiple sides. So they can have somebody Sova drone you out, or somebody toss a flash or a Sova dart in here while they pinch you from multiple sides because they can scale up behind yellow. They can even get all the way behind you, and your team will usually leave you to defend this area, so you really need to be able to anchor it down as the Viper with your ultimate. So rather, a much better ultimate would be to take up some space here, maybe go for a quick jump peek. If you see enemies pushing up, do something like this that covers both lanes in green, so that no matter what, if they're trying to take B through the B site, they will have to go through your Viper ult. You can play this line, you can play around here, you can even toss a little one-way smoke up here if you really want to give you more options to play around. And this is definitely just a much better ultimate, because if they want to take the B site, they either gotta go through this and fight you, or they're gonna have to go through middle, or they'll probably just go A site in general. So yeah, basically, when placing Viper ults, you just want to fill the gaps. You don't want there to be little pockets or areas that the enemies can push through and take advantage of your misplaced Viper ult. And that's basically it. When playing Viper, one of the most key things to always remember is to just use your abilities together for maximum effect. Remember guys, your molly itself doesn't do that much damage. It's only 12.5 damage per second. But your molly in combination with a smoke orb on the bomb does an insane amount of damage and will force enemies off the bomb. So don't be playing for lineups if you don't have a smoke on the bomb, right? That just makes no sense and it won't be working for you. So always remember to use your abilities together for maximum effect, of course. And just as important is remembering that your wall and orb can be manually turned off to save fuel, of course. Learn to conserve fuel for maximum uptime in key situations. Also, very crucial is to calm to your teammates whenever your wall is going to fall because you're running out of fuel. This is really important for them to know, as your wall dropping at an unexpected time can easily get them killed. So always calm to your teammates when your fuel is low and when your wall is going to drop. This is a very underrated piece of advice that not enough Vipers take into mind when playing the character. And that's it for my Viper guide, guys. Definitely one of the more complicated agents in Valorant that has a lot of nuance and intricacies, but don't be intimidated to play her. She's very strong in the current meta, and I hope you guys learned enough today to start playing her confidently in ranked. As you put more time and experience and then start to integrate slowly some lineups and getting more experience playing with them, you'll become a very strong Smoke and Viper player. And if you liked the video, be sure to drop a like on it, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching. But also, I want to show off what a bad ultimate looks like so you know what to avoid, because I've seen way too many bad Viper ults in my game and I don't want you to be that guy. So let's hop. I can't speak English. So let's hop back in.